So, they finally fixed Sohei. The short answer? The longer answer?
Yes? No.
Nah, I'm just kidding. After the recent balance patch, rest in peace Hitakiri, they finally gave Sohei a new way to start a fight at the expense of some of his health points. But how much did this unseeming change actually help this noodle-armed warrior monk out? So, first of all, let's talk about which new options open up for him during battle. Although most of the forhonor community, including me, are not the biggest fans of neutral hyper armor, this change really showed just how necessary this was for Sohei. With him already having this massive health pool, giving him hyper armor was basically a no-brainer. The ability to fish for hyper armor trades during ganks, or baiting out attacks with a zone attack, gave him a new well-needed way to deal damage. Although they still haven't acknowledged his absolute piss-poor pathetic damage. This is a good step in the right direction. But this change still misses the mark when it comes to balancing Sohei as a hero. His entire stick, the entire trade-off of this hero, is overall lower base damage in order for one extreme burst of damage. The devs just simply don't seem to grasp one very simple thing. If the only way for Sohei to deal any meaningful amount of damage is a 7th soul strike, and his fastest way to gain souls is a guard break, why the fuck would I even parry a single one of his attacks? And I'm absolutely serious. I would give you guys a basic how to counter Sohei guide in 2 steps. This is applicable at any situation, at any point in the time, in every skill ceiling. Just don't fucking parry him. It sadly is as easy as that. Extra points for everyone that can block his combo lights. I guess. If you can consistently pull this off, or hell, if you can even somewhat consistently pull this off, it just makes it way harder for him to get his 7 souls. Even if you get hit by every single attack and he doesn't faint a single time. The cumulative damage is so low, it basically still negates all of the threats he would gain from having 6 souls. In other words, just tanking his low damage unblockables is much smarter than giving him a guard break. Add to this hypothetical situation that the Sohei player will actually try to go for guard breaks and will not go through with every one of his unblockables. You realize how big of a problem his low base damage really is. Add on top all of that the second he has all heavy souls, you can just start doing sidestep lights in order to counter his guard break mix-up. Because he cannot gain more than 1 combo light on a successful parry, it just slows him down even more. So basically, don't parry him if he has all heavy attacks, just do light sidesteps. But let's stop my little rant and come back to what I was actually trying to say. You see, for me it is just logical that if he already deals so little damage and chews through so much stamina, because he always has to use his zone attack in order to get to his combo finishers, that he'd at least get anything out of his souls. In one of my earlier videos, I already talked about how it is absolutely idiotic that the only way he can use his souls is by having all 6 of them. In that video, I brought forth the idea that he should be able to use certain special attacks at the cost of souls. During that video specifically, I mentioned a different way his souls could be utilized apart from his 7th soul strike and soul soother. These special attacks or soul attacks would consume 1 soul and could only be used after parry. This would open up so many options for Sohei to actually be viable. From follow-up attacks that gain the ability to drag your opponent, to soul attacks that give Sohei the option to debuff people with his base kit. Everything would become possible with the implementation of this change. Hell, you name it, it could happen. And since all of these attacks are locked behind low damage chain finishers, you could go wild with these soul attacks. But these changes haven't become reality. So let's come back to the changes that we got in the game. His neutral hyper armor opened up a new way of playing the game by actually attacking. Not having to constantly flow into a zone attack after light attack means that you can add pressure a whole lot faster than before. Even though his combo attack damage is still absolutely abysmal, you can now reach them way faster. Another interaction that opened up is after you block a non-enhanced light from your opponent. Even before this patch, you could always go for a front step bash on light block. Due to your opponent's block recovery, your opponent was unable to interrupt you. Now, since his hyper armor starts up so early in the attack animation, you can go for a zone attack after blocking a light. Another interaction that has changed in his favor is his follow-up after guard break counter. If you input a zone attack right after a guard break counter, your opponent's light will be too slow to interrupt you due to your hyper armor. This little interaction means you can now either go for an enhanced light and then flow into a zone attack in order to go for an unblockable mix-up, or you could go for the zone straight away. This allows for a much smoother offensive than before, since you don't have to rely on solely his light into zone follow-up in order to reach his combo attack finishers. A new strategy that can be used while ganking is constantly feinting neutral heavy attacks until you see your opponent fully committing to one attack. If your opponent is unable to feint their recovery, which most of the characters in the roster can't, you will hit them with your hyper armor without them being able to stop you. This is especially useful when your opponent is at low HP and almost has a full revenge bar. If used correctly, this can deny revenge very consistently. Due to how fast he actually gains hyper armor on his animation startup, you can now react to neutral heavy attacks with a zone attack. In order for this to work consistently, your opponent has to attack on the same side his guard is already facing. In the clips I have shown, you can see that I first put my guard in the direction of the attack and then input a zone attack. This is so that I can block my opponent's light attack if he would have done one instead of a heavy. Generally speaking, these changes allow Sohei to use his massive health pool in order to get momentum. The interaction changes after guard break and the light block mean he can get to his combo unblockables faster and safer than ever before. Even though his low combo damage prevents him from being an absolute rushdown machine, I love these changes and I love how they changed the fundamental way you can play Sohei. Maybe you've noticed in the background footage, but you can now constantly throw out zone attacks while being ganked in order to keep everybody in check. Nothing will be able to interrupt you. And, as we all know, his zone attack tags the entire map. Now, to answer the question from the beginning of the video. Did they fix Sohei? No, they didn't. His identity as a sole resource hero is still lacking. You gave him the coolest concept out of every hero and did absolutely nothing with it. Considering that you get all 6 of your souls maybe 3 to 4 times in a good match and literally just once in a bad one, I see this mechanic as a straight up failure. The devs have every way to make him great and simply refuse to change him in a major way. For me, there are 2 main options on how to fix Sohei. The first one is increasing his base damage slightly, but also increasing his 7 soul strike damage. I personally don't like this change, but I know how frustrating it can be to get instant nuked the second you come onto a zone with a Sohei. The other option, which I would prefer a whole lot more, is the implementation of these mentioned soul attacks. This would make him into an even more tactical hero, because you'd have to choose when the right time to use which soul attack is, or if it's simply smarter to hold your souls for a 7th soul strike. But these soul attacks sadly just are wishful thinking. But who knows? It's Christmas season after all. Maybe my wish comes true. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching up until now. It really means the world to me. I'm sorry for the lack of uploads recently, but I still wish all of you Merry Christmas. Oh, yeah, and before I forget, watch yourselves out there, okay?